on? Okay, sorry. I'm glad to be here. First, I would like to acknowledge and thank Q2B for inviting us to be here to present Kirq. I'm from Numana, and okay, do I have to point somewhere? Okay, there it is. Numana is a non-for-profit organization based in the province of Quebec. Basically, we're industry-led, and we ask industry, what are your issues 5 years down the road, and look at disruptive technology, which have a social impact. So, for example, metaverse. We have another initiative in empathic neighborhoods. In space data, for example. And 3 years ago, we started to look at quantum. What could we do? And we sort of look at various model, including, let's say, Holland, Netherlands. And we came up with a strategy to offer a testbed in quantum communication. Usually our activities, they start with a think tank, then they go either with a living lab, and then eventually they go to a full-fledged test bed. Kirq was announced 6 weeks ago, and it's an eye blink, obviously, to people my age of Star Trek and Captain Kirk. William Shatner is Montreal-born, educated at McGill, so we sort of wanted to recognize the impact he had on my life and probably hundreds of thousands of people also. So Kirq, we've talked about testbed most of the afternoon. So Kirq is a quantum communication testbed. It's a tool. Numana and Kirq do not do any research. We do not take IP. We do not fund project. We offer a hammer, and people come in to build the furniture they want, basically. So we look at the commercially available solution or close to be commercially available solution and offer them at a daily price, let's say. And that avoids maybe a 6 or 9 months delay to get the QKD machine, for example, at $250,000. So we already bought some equipment. I'll come back to that a little later. But it's also important to notice it's a real-world environment. It's not a lab with perfect fiber in a ultra-secure, clean laboratory. It is existing fiber. Noel mentioned we have some fiber in Sherbrooke, for example, which was deployed in the 1980s. So they're actually, and I have one example of a case where there was a fiber loop of 35 kilometers. The Bell Canada, the biggest operator in Canada, was offering us. And when they went into the pole, the fiber was not there anymore. So we had another one that was supplied. So real world condition, either above land, underneath the street in Montreal, our partners tell us. So we'll have underneath fiber. And the idea is to accelerate development, encourage local investment, and especially train resources. 4 characteristics. The testbed is open to almost every country around the world. It's open first to industry, but also to academia. And they come in and they propose a project. And they have access for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, depending on if it's under or guidelines or not. It's scalable in the sense that it's both it's fiber optics, it's wireless line of sight, so we'll have 5G, 6G, infrared or RF, or that's going to be deployed. It's adaptable, so we grow the system as the plane flies. So it's the customer that will eventually tell us what they really need, and we do have some budgets to acquire portions of equipment which could be used by other people in the sandbox. And it's collaborative, so we have a strong community in quantum in Canada in general, and Quebec in particular. Recently, the Quebec government are investing into innovation zones. The first one was in quantum in Sherbrooke, several $100 million worth of investment for a park, among which is a building called Espace Quantique 1, the Quantum Space 1. It's a former newspaper facility, so it has a cement floor this big, which is excellent for the laboratory that they're deploying. The drawback was that it took a year more to refurbish. So the Sherbrooke node is opening this month with the first connection. I'll come back to that. So it's independent. We don't look at what's being done, although we do advise our partners what's being done with their equipment. It's managed by Numana. We have a small team. We've hired a PhD recently, which will handhold the people. We have subcontractors which provide support, but basically the test is being run by the client, the customer. Very open to partnership. And we have an advisory committee which is composed of experts. For example, Quantaset just launched a venture fund, pre-seed venture fund out of Sherbrooke. So Martin is on the board. In Quebec, there's an excellence center that regroups about 50 or so researchers in the quantum field, going from materials all the way to application. That's called Intric, which is French for entanglement, basically. So he's the director's on the board. And we have somebody from the National Optic Institute in Quebec City, the third node. And the interesting thing about INO is that they're developing optics, photonics, and they're looking at memories and transducers at the present time. And we have representative from our 2 or 3 strategic partner. I'll come back again a little bit later. I understand I'm the last hurdle for before a nice beer, so I'm not throwing anything too technical, but just show. Okay, I'm continuing. Okay, it's a multi-hub infrastructure. We have 3 cities. Sherbrooke, I mentioned, is opening. Montreal will follow. Sherbrooke is with Bell Canada. Montreal with TELUS. Quebec City might be either or, but also the interesting thing about Quebec City is that it's adjacent to the biggest Defense of Canada laboratories, and they're looking at reaching their troops fully secured on a mobile 24/7, etc. So we'll have a half which will be a line of sight type of capabilities. Multi-node in the sense that there's sort of 3 levels of service. One is purely the dark fiber, so somebody has an emitter or a detector, so we can provide from 2, 4, up to maybe 60 kilometers worth of fiber for testing purpose. And the next level will be a QKD. So we bought equipment. I'll come back to that the next slide. But users don't really need to know what's between Alice and Bob. They just need to know what's before and after. So there's a physical presence on the site, or there's a internet connectivity to the platform. Different technologies that are offered, and it's a mixture of both classical and photonic quantum technologies. So classical Sienna is on board. They're providing a certain amount of equipment that will be linked to the QKD at the early stage. So for example, we acquired some ID Quantique C-band, O-band, a Toshiba multiplex system, the first one. The Canadian company Evolution Q handles the key management infrastructure to coordinate the different topologies. So I mentioned Sienna for classical DWDM systems. The topology is flexible, so we can go from 2 to maybe 40 and more kilometer of fiber. And we physically, at each node, we have a room for people to set up their experiments. Here, Quebec City is about 250 kilometers from Montreal. Montreal, Sherbrooke is about 150. The next step is to both IDQ and Toshiba view this test bed as being a neutral type of environment to deploy equipment, but also to showcase. So the Sherbrooke to Montreal is the next hurdle where they want to do it without trusted node. We know trusted nodes are doable. Korea has an excellent network. There's no requirement yet from the government of Quebec or Canada to deploy such a big network, so we're just waiting till the market asks for it. So this year, 2023, is the Sherbrooke hub. Next year, Montreal probably by Q2, Quebec City by Q4. 2025, we're looking at, depending on the Canadian Space Agency, there's a KeySat initiative to launch. So there'll be a QKD experiment to be done. We'll be involved on the land-based connectivity. So it's in the suburb of Montreal. Montreal to Quebec, I mentioned 250 kilometer. That's the second hurdle that the QKD partners wants to cover on one step. And the last one, okay, obviously, yeah, the third level I mentioned is entanglement, everything that Noel and Eric mentioned. We're looking at it. We're awaiting till there's a commercial request for it, industrial interest. So, but it's on our roadmap. Okay, sorry. So we're targeting at the onset industry. So telecom, government, health related type of activity, banks. So we're not going to cut and paste what's being done elsewhere, but we cut and paste plus. So we're talking about with Bell and TELUS to do what British Telecom has done or what they're doing in Korea and going one step above. But again, those are tools to provide and convince the early adoption by banks and insurance company, for example. We're focusing on industry first, but obviously the academia is more than welcome. So I think I went over most of these things. So what might be important is that by acquiring equipment now, and we've done it for the past 18 months, companies have access to maybe QKD equipment tomorrow without waiting for maybe 9 months or 12 months delivery time, but especially not having to pay the $250K. So until the prices go down, we provide, we reduce costs and accelerate the proceed. And we're open for business now. We're starting, and we welcome American and European partners, Asian, Japan also. So in conclusion, we're two of the major, the first two operators in Canada are partners, Sienna, and there'll be others also. I mentioned IDQ, Toshiba, Evolution Q are providing the system we provide. And we have funding both from Government of Quebec, Canada, and MyTac is interesting because they provide a program to quick turnaround of resources. So the first cycle master's PhD can be invited to work on 3 months, 6 months internships at very low cost. So we already fast tracked that portion. So I thank you very much, and I'm here tonight. I'm here tomorrow, and I'm willing to answer some questions now. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jacques. Any questions?
Thank you for the talk. I'm just always curious about this because we get asked this question a lot as well. Do you have industry actually asking you to perform specific use case trials on your network yet? Because they dabble in our, you know, with Gotham Q, you know, we get people who are browsing sort of at the fringes, but they never commit to a real use case question.
Well, it's not, you're not fighting at the door. That's one thing. But yeah, we do have 2 or 3 examples. One is to test out an emitter, a photon emitter. So we supply, we will supply soon. It's not started yet. We'll supply the fiber and the photon receptor, or detector rather. Another case is to test out the I mentioned Evolution Q, so they're using our Sherbrooke testbed to test the flexibility of deploying different topologies. So we've announced the project maybe 6 weeks ago. I'm here because it was announced. so yeah. But eventually we might do stuff together to exchange good procedures. I'm sort of one step not behind, but more on the commercial end. You're more on the development and research end. So that's where we're heading eventually. But we need traction from the market.